Hi everybody, I'm Lucy Driver, the executive head here at St Paul's Nursery School and Children's Centre. I think some of you know me, probably see me in passing. I'm tucked in my office quite a lot of the time and out and about because St Paul's also runs the Bristol and Beyond Stronger Practice Hub. We work with 8 local authorities, so we're in a good place to find out about best practice. And today we're going to talk a lot about best practice, and I'm going to share with you something that is incredibly dear to my heart, and something that is fundamental to the way that we work at St Paul's, where we hold safe children's emotional well-being, and staff and families. So session on emotion coaching, a strategy for how we support the children here in their self-regulation. So let me explain as we go on. What does emotion coaching mean? What is it? What's it all about? So it's helping children and young people to understand the different emotions they experience, why they occur, and how to handle them. And emotion coaching was developed by a guy called John Gottman, 2007. I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a minute. But all the research suggests that feeling understood and being able to express your emotions is key to happy, resilient, and well-adjusted children and young people. But to feel happy and safe, children need boundaries too. Emotion coaching, it moves away a bit from old style thoughts around behaviour management, which was about time out. I mean, I can remember Super Nanny when people were sent to the step to think about the dreadful things that they've done and the behaviour that they was trying to be corrected in that style of behaviour management. So time out. It's around blame and shame and about correction, not about connection. But emotion coaching is so much about time in. So really recognizing behavior as a form of communication and that people need people. And it's about being supporting co-regulation with available adults around you. So I'm not going to pretend to be a neuroscientist, although to be fair, I have got quite a lot of books about neuroscience on my bookshelf and I've read quite a lot because it's really fascinating. But, you'll all know that more and more and more, we're increasingly aware that feelings and behaviours and physicality are all linked to brain activity. There's a flow that informs each of those. So our minds manage the energy flow and they convert it into information. So, if our brain says wiggle your toes, we wiggle our toes. Yeah, if our brain says that's hot, off we go, yeah, that's hot. We expect something to be hot. Just as if we go, that's really sad, we'll have a response, a physical response with a feeling that overwhelms us. And it's that head to toe brain and nervous system that makes it possible for every cell in the body to be part of that flow of information and energy. It's around a distributed nervous system. And also we know loads more about the brain, don't we? And this is so basic, so don't quote me. And I'm sure there's probably some of you parents reading this thinking, she's probably misrepresenting this, but let's have a go. We know a bit about the lower brain having basic life support functions. And look, I'm holding my hand up already and I'll explain why in a minute. The midbrain being about motor functions, impulses and emotions. And the top bit, the higher brain, being the social, emotional, cognitive functions. So let's move on. Like I say, I was holding my hand up. So in a minute, I'm going to show you a slide by a guy called Dan Siegel, who just shares the hand model where he explains the brain as a hand, basically, with the top bit being the cerebral cortex, the thinking cap. So that's at the top. The middle bit being the mammalian brain. So where there's these strong emotions and motion stuffs there. And then the bottom bit is the reptilian brain, where there's the whole freeze and fight. And basically, when children are functioning, when they're regulated, they have that rational, the cerebral cortex thinking cap over the top, keeping safe their reptilian and their mammalian a mammalian brain. But when they have a strong emotional response, they flip their lid. Up comes the lid, exposing the emotional, the reptilian brain, and consequently creating behaviours and feelings that they are finding hard to regulate. Let me move on. So that's the YouTube link for you to listen to understanding the hand model of the brain. But let's just think about when we flip our lids. So the downstairs brain, the bottom bit, the reptilian bit of our brain, goes into instantaneous response of the fight, flight, or freezing. And we become irrational, don't we? We lose the rational brains up, the reptilian brain's exposed. So we might fight to remove ourselves from a threat, fight it off, or remove ourselves completely, or freeze. Yeah, immobility, big eyes. Imagine those little children, that smile, that sort of numb smile. And perhaps they might, have an accident and accidentally wet themselves because they're just frozen. And then the behaviors that we see in the upstairs brain are aggression. So fighting out, we might see pushing, shouting, biting, kicking. This is the bit that we see. We don't see the bottom bit. This is the bit that we see. And that's about trying to find safety through dominance or absence, people absenting themselves, children just running off, or safety through concealment, hiding underneath things. I mean, we've all seen that, haven't we, with our children? I remember it myself. You're trying to say, have a conversation, and oh, what on earth are you doing? Let's talk about that. You can't do that again. And woof, they're off. They've got an emotional response that is too scary, so they're absenting themselves. And then appeasement as a sort of behaviour you could sometimes see with young children who have flipped their lips when it's sort of, it wasn't me, you still love me, don't you? And the emotional bit does mad things really when we're in this state, because we're in survival mode. We're not in a thriving mode. So the key really, with all of us actually, but with young children particularly, is helping them to put their lids back on. So help with the de-escalation, because when a child is really, really escalated, it's a bit like a sudden bang. It's a shock, I suppose, but like when you're having a panic attack. And we see all those things in escalation, don't we? We know that their bodies are surging with adrenaline and cortisol and rising blood pressure. You see children shallow breathing and that increased muscle tension. You can just see it, can't you? Some children sort of rigid with that emotion and that escalation, because that's their reptilian, their downstairs brain that's in charge. They've gone into survival mode. So, our job in emotion coaching and supporting children to self-regulate is to support de-escalation as quickly as possible in children. There already is a natural rebalancing in our body, but our job is to help and nurture and make the rebalancing happen quicker, getting that lid back on more quickly. And it's getting in touch actually with that vagus nerve, because that is that triggers de-escalation. And when somebody's de-escalating and being de-escalated, it releases the different sort of hormones, the ones that we want for children to feel safe and secure and contented and rational. The oxytocin, the dopamine, lowers blood pressure, breathing deepens, and you can see whole little bodies relax, can't you, with reduced muscle tension. And evidence tells us that emotion coaching, the strategies that I'm going to share with you in a minute, really, really speed up the de-escalation process. It's really hard for a little person to be in a state of escalation all the time. And sometimes we might have children at nursery who are really hyper vigilant. And then they're children that sort of go backwards and forwards all day long, between being really escalated and we calm down a bit. Up again they go, and down and up again. And it's really quite traumatic, very exhausting. for these little ones, and they have poor vagal tone. Their vagal nerve isn't responding as well as we'd like to, because it hasn't had the opportunity to be rehearsed. It's unsafe to be in a state of raised escalation all day, all week. So a little bit more before we move on to emotion coaching is just to say that, when the arousal increases in a child, it's there again, look, the fight and the flight and the freezing as options of that reptilian brain being leading the brain, so being in survival mode with all those outcomes, numbness, shame, depression, panic, anxiety, fear, worry, irritation, rage, loss of energy, shutdown. And what we're aiming for is that social engagement, where children stay connected, they feel safe, they're grounded, they're safe enough to be curious and be in the present, but also they're able to have compassion and think about other people, think beyond themselves. So we're always trying to keep the arousal down. So teaching children how to self-regulate to keep it down is key to happy life. Okay, on to the next bit. Response styles. So John Gottman actually was a family therapist, and he spent a lot of time working with couples and realized quite quickly in his research that a lot of the conflict that happens in families and between couples is about different response styles to your children. And as soon as I start to talk about these, you'll start thinking, God, maybe that's interesting. Certainly when I learned about this, it really made me go back and reflect on my role as a parent with my one and only, but also the parenting that I'd experienced from my parents. I certainly had a few things to say to my mum and dad about a particular style. Anyway, let me introduce you to the 4 response styles. So I'll talk through the 4 of them, and let's start with the top right. So you'll see we've got these accesses of high guidance and high empathy. Because the remit, the whole premise around emotion coaching is it's about high guidance, high empathy, perfect balance. But let's start with where they're not perfectly balanced. So a disapproving response style. That's one when you have very high guidance and no empathy, low empathy. So let me give you an example. So that's when you say, get off that wall now. Or, get off that wall now, or pick that up now, please. Or don't, stop talking like that. It's making me really cross. Or why have you done that? You're so silly. Don't do that again. And disapproving style, and so there's no guidance, there's no recognition of why that might be happening, or a failure, or so what's that behavior communicating? And sometimes people might use a disapproving style when they're scared. So adults are scared. If a child's going to do something that you think's unsafe, you might go, stop it now. But you wouldn't do any, but you're not responding to their emotions or what's actually going on. So stop it right now is a real sort of disapproving style. Let's go down now to the dismissing style. And I think this is one that, I've travelled around the country, in fact, actually around Europe, looking at earlier settings. You can see a dismissive style in practitioners sometimes, and I think it's always comes from good intention. So this is about when you're responding in a way that has low guidance, but also low empathy. And it's usually comes in a bit of a form of a distraction. Mummy's gone, Cal's trying, mummy's gone. Oh, let's just go outside, or, oh, have you hurt your knee? Let's rub it better. And let's rub it better and go and get the trains out. So it's dismissing it's not it's not actually saying, it's not recognizing the emotion or the behavior at all. It's just distracting. Oh dear, let's just get this out now. And then moving on to the laissez-faire style. In contrast, this isn't one that you see very often in an earlier setting. Yeah, there's so many young children here. Our team here do have to have high guidance. So laissez-faire is when you are incredibly empathic in your response, but you don't give them any guidance. So it's a sort of over connection. I'm so sorry. That must feel awful. I really understand. I feel like that too. That's really upsetting me too. It must be terrible. I bet you're worried about. So just this constant dialogue with empathy. And yeah, like I say, it's an over connection. And I think, parents tend to do this more than practitioners. So, because quite often you are wanting to really acknowledge a child's feeling, aren't you? And make them feel noticed and loved. But actually part of that is making them feel safe as well. So the fourth style is his preferable style, the way that we get greatest traction in terms of supporting children's self-regulation, their self-esteem and their autonomy and their decision-making and their sense of self-worth. So this is the response style, emotion coaching style, which is high empathy. I really see that's really hard for you. I'm really sorry, but high guidance. But right now, it's not okay to do this. Let's either do this or this. High empathy, high guidance, acknowledging, helping them to feel safe. Before I move on to explain them more in detail, just a bit of a health warning. I mean, not everybody can function in an emotion coaching response style all the time. There are moments, if your child's just about to step into something unsafe, well, you will go, stop it. And there may be times when your child really well and that they might just need distracting with something, just to sort of move them on from being stuck in a state of high arousal. But yeah, I think so. There's an element which I'm sure all of us will probably, as parents, use all of these styles, but it's thinking and attending to them. And really trying to find that right balance through an emotion coaching style, which is the style that we support our children with at St Paul's Nursery all the time. Okay, bit more. So I suppose this is just a slide for you to think about really later on, where I'm just asking you to consider some scenarios that you deal with during your day at home in your family with your children. For example, your child might not want to come to the table, get dressed, help tidy up. That's a biggie here. Yeah, but we're trying to recall them back to come and tidy up some of the mess they've just created. They're not quite as amenable, and sometimes go into conflict and have really strong emotional responses to it. You might have a little one that doesn't want to be strapped into their car seat or the buggy, or one that pushes another child because they've got something they want and they get upset, or your little one might lie and cry on the floor because they don't want to come to nursery or leave nursery, or they might throw or break toys or really not want to go to bed. So just have a little wonder with your family grouping of what sort of scenarios play out during your day and how you respond to them. And if you respond differently, it's always it's a really useful conversation to have. So let's dig a bit deeper, and let's look at that first, just disapproving response to an emotionally charged child. So to disapprove, to say, get up, stop doing that, do this now, disapproves of the negative emotions. And it's almost sort of saying, I'm not going to acknowledge those emotions because they're a sign of weakness and you're out of control and it's not helpful. So just do this now, stop it. And in the disapproving response, it lacks empathy, and there's always an element of being critical and intolerant of what's going on. Oh, you know, I've told you to stop walking on that wall. Of course you've fallen off. Don't do it again. You know, I've told you to stop climbing up that thing because you're going to fall off. And that's what's happened. Don't do it again. So, yeah, and that's, you know, to a child who's upset or crying. So, and it's trying to get rid of the negative emotions by discipline or reprimand or punishment. And it does tend to, a disapproving response tends to focus on what the child's actually doing rather than the emotions that are being generated, that are generating the behaviour. And I think, you know, that disapproving response, you know, you sometimes might hear people say, oh, they're trying to control us, they're trying to manipulate us, they're trying to get attention, they're being dramatic. So that disapproving response is more likely to view negative emotional displays as a form of manipulation or being naughty, or, you know, we never use that word here because all behavior is a kind of communication. It's a way of communicating. But, you know, disapproving response quite has like lack of obedience. You never do what I say, or bad character. You always get it wrong. So it's very negative, and it's often motivated by the need to control or regain power, or toughen up a child. So that's remember, the disapproving. So high guidance, no empathy. Next one is dismissive response. Remember the one? So very no guidance and no empathy. So a dismissive response, like I said before, usually quite often has good intentions. So it's people wanting to make a child feel better. But again, it shows the message is I'm uncomfortable with negative emotions, and they've got to be got over quickly. And, you know, there's a tendency, if you respond in a dismissive way, that you think if you indulge the emotions, it will make everything worse or prolong them, hence tending to distract. So it sort of stops negative emotions by reducing, minimizing, making light of importance. Yeah, mummy's gone. Oh well, she'll be back soon. Let's go outside. Or you don't want to share. Oh well, it doesn't matter. There's two. And I think the other thing about dismissive too, which again is a bit about the good intention, is it's often motivated by a need to rescue, make things better, fix the problem. Oh, you can't do that. Don't worry, I'll do it for you. Totally dismissive. You know, it's not a sort of that feels really uncomfortable. I can see you're really struggling. Let's think about some ways that you might be able to do it again. So dismissing. Third one. Oh, no, let me just tell you about these two. So dismissing and disapproving messages, they both pretty much say the same thing to a child, which is what you're feeling isn't right. Your assessment of the problem is wrong. Nothing to worry about, or you're stupid. And you must not feel this way because frankly, I'm trying to belittle the strong emotions. And when you're doing that, a child doesn't learn to trust in their own feelings or trust in their own decision making, or their own strategies to resolve things. It's not giving opportunities to really experience emotions and learn to start dealing with them. And in dealing with them and learning to self-regulate, they grow up being unprepared for just how tricky life really is. So because, like I say, not given opportunities to practice the self-regulation and create that story in their head for themselves for how they're going to solve the problem. Leading, you know, that suppression of natural emotions and less or lack of self-regulation and reliance on distraction to get rid of emotions just generates more unhealthy feelings long term. Resentment, guilt, shame, anger. I mean, shame is the worst, isn't it? You know, I often talk here with our team about those bags of shame. You know, the times when you haven't done something that you know you probably ought to have done, but actually, you know, I always say, let's cut the tie of that bag of shame and talk about the emotions behind that and acknowledge it and come up with a plan, rather than sort of hide the emotion away so it turns into something much more poisonous, really. So the third one We've done disapproving, dismissive, the laissez-faire response to emotionally charged child. We see more and more laissez-faire responses since COVID, actually, just as we see more and more children who are less able to self-regulate or cope with being in a big social context. You need resilience to embrace life at a big nursery, and to separate really comfortably from your parent. And just constantly sitting with acknowledging of emotions and feelings isn't necessarily that helpful to little people. They need an adult to be an adult and model high guidance. So laissez-faire is about being over empathic, sitting with the child in this and saying, you find it really hard too, and you're so upset about it too, and you can't believe how upsetting it is for them, and it's so hard, and you understand, and let's just sit here and take as long as it takes for you to really, really, really calm down and think about how sad you're feeling. And it's sort of over attention to their state, and sometimes it's even about preempting, like I said earlier on, suggesting that there might be something there to get emotionally charged about, which sort of breeds, it sets them up to be anxious spiral into escalation, and then not having the strategies to de-escalate, so staying in escalation for too long that ultimately affects body and mind and confidence and self-esteem. Yeah, so if they're in that state for too long, they're not learning the skills to regulate or cope with a wider social context. And a laissez-faire response to emotionally charged child is where the adult doesn't provide guidance or clean or really clear boundaries about behaviour and options. But that actually gives the child just too much control. They're little, they haven't got life experience, they aren't actually in control. So to feel safe, they need to know that their trusted, attuned, loving, present adult is going to keep them safe with some sensible adult guidance and decisions and boundaries. So that's the laissez-faire. So on to the optimal emotion coaching response, which is basically to empathise and to guide. Remember the two axes, to empathise and to guide. So to recognise emotions, including those really tricky negative ones, are actually natural and normal and not always a matter of choice. And to promote self-regulation of emotions and behaviour to retain a child's self-dignity. It's interesting, isn't it, that recognising emotions, because each one of us will see emotional responses in our children that have different triggers for us. Things will wind me up, certain things that really won't wind up my lovely colleague Robin. That quite often that's because of our own lived experience and our own parenting and that sort of stuff. But all emotions, it's our sort of duty to recognise that all emotions are natural and normal, even if they wind you up. And then we promote self-regulation and behaviour to retain the self-dignity. So there are 5 steps of emotion coaching, which we subsume into 3 easy ones that I'll talk through. The first one is being aware of the child's response. And, sometimes it's not completely obvious, is it? If you've got a quiet child who doesn't, shout loudly or cry a lot or really physically show you how they're feeling. Those antennae have got to be pretty polished, haven't they? If you see a child who might be withdrawing slightly or is blinking a bit more, is holding their muscles tight, it's being really attentive and aware to the child's response. And then in doing that, inviting it, recognizing that emotional times are an opportunity for intimacy, connection, empathy, love, but also teaching those life skills. Listen empathically and validate children's feelings. Help a child to verbally label emotions and which helps soothe the nervous system and really speeds up the recovery rate. And set limits while helping the child to problem solve. Verbally labeling the emotions is quite tricky, actually. Let's talk. Yeah, because sometimes you get it wrong, don't you? I mean, you know, there've been times in my life when I've said, you know, I can see you're feeling really angry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry, you know, and then it's like, you know, persist. Oh, I'm sorry I got that wrong. I'm really sorry I got that wrong. I wonder what else might be going on for you. You know, maybe I think I might be feeling a bit frustrated if I was in your place, or is that making you a bit sad? You know, when they're little, you need to offer them alternatives. And also label those alternatives when you're modeling them yourself so that they're getting a really good role model. But yeah, persist with verbally labeling the emotions. And when you do get it right, you know, when you say, "Oh, I can see, I think you might be feeling really frightened." It's like if you get it, yeah, right, it's magic. You know, it's like the start of the de-escalation. You can witness it, you can feel it, you can hear it quite often. So these 5 steps have become 3 really simple steps in practice. And this is what we do right across Simple's Nursery. And the staff are skilled up to do it. And it happens very quickly sometimes. And other times it can take a much longer time. Step 1, recognizing, empathizing, validating the feelings and labeling them. Like I said, might get it wrong, but persist. Step 2, setting limits on behavior. Not okay. And then step 3, problem solving with a child or young person. So let me explain them a bit more. So the first step, empathize, validate, and label. That is, like I've said, about recognizing all emotions, even the most frustrating ones, as being natural and normal, and not always a matter of choice. You know, your body just explodes if you are escalating. If something's upset you, if you flipped your lid as a little person, you can't choose, you know, until you've mastered the skills of self-regulation. You are at mercy really to those bottom bits of your brain that are being exposed. Look for the physical and the verbal signs of the emotion being felt. Like I said, you know, the tensed up, the distraction, the blinking, yawning. Yeah, child who yawns. Yeah, yawning is a sort of actually a bit of a physical way of self-regulating. If they're yawning, there's some level of stress going on, unless they're completely exhausted, of course. Take on the child's perspective. I can see, I can hear, I get that. If I was there, I'd think that too. And use words to reflect back the child's emotion and help them label it. Yeah, I think that would be really, really annoying. I'd feel so annoyed. It'd make me feel a bit crossed inside and I might want to cry, you know, but really, yeah. Affirm and empathize, allowing to calm down. Like I said, it's okay to be feeling like that. It's really understandable. I get that. The lid starts to go back on. And then provide a narrative for the emotional experience and create those cognitive links and connections for them. Yeah, I've just seen that somebody's just taken your train off you. And I can see that you're feeling really strongly. That's not okay. Tell me what's going on for you. You're feeling really angry. Yeah, it's angry. You feel angry. Where are you feeling angry? And look, I can see you're clenching your fists. So I wonder what we're going to do about that. So it's the constant narrative. It's really important for them to rehearse self-regulation. The next slide is it's just got a slide. It is a YouTube link actually, but I'm convinced if I click on it, the whole webinar will crash. So Google it. It's Brené Brown, who is one of my gurus in life actually, and it's just a really short little film about empathy. What does real empathy look like? Because it's very different to sympathy, and I think people quite often think they're being empathic and they're really not. So it's worth a look, but it's basically about coming alongside and saying, hey, I get it. I'm alongside you. I'm hearing, I'm seeing, I'm noticing. That feels really hard. It's not about saying, well, at least you can do that, or well, when I did that. It's about coming down that ladder, sitting alongside somebody and really hearing and validating. what's going on for them and the feelings. So yeah, Brené Brown on empathy. Have a watch. I think I've made my partner watch it about 20 times. It's it's very good that we all remember what real empathy looks like. So step 2. Oh, hang on. No, these are just some examples. So yeah, I've talked about these already, haven't I? Some examples of the step 1. I can see that you're angry. When or about. I'd feel angry if that happened to me too. It's really okay. It's normal to feel like that. I can see how sad you are. I'd be feeling like that too if my friend hurt me. Or, I think you might be feeling frustrated. I know you find coming to the table really difficult. You know, I've given you lots of examples, I think, haven't I? So step 2, setting limits. It says if needed, but I think more and more they are needed. The world's quite a scary place, isn't it? And post-COVID, it seems a little bit more scary and people seem a little bit more wobbly. So limits or boundaries are really important in the life of a young child. So it's stating the boundary limits of acceptable behaviour, what is and isn't okay to do, making it clear that they're not going to be accepted, and then but really attending to retaining the child's self-dignity. So some examples. In our family, we always use kind hands or kind words, or it's not okay to break things. I need you to stop shouting, please, so I can listen to you properly and we can talk about it. No, I need you to stop shouting. I need you to stop shouting. What else? No, I need you to get up off the floor, please, because we just need to leave now because this is closing and we've got things to do and I'm not waiting. So really clear, supportive boundaries. We're the grown-ups, aren't we? And if children have too much power, it's frightening. They're too little. They haven't got life experience or mental capacity to have all the power yet, have they? Okay, so step 3, problem solving. So you wait for the child to be calm and in a relaxed, rational state. So that lid is coming back on because of the empathy and the validation, the affirmation, and the clear boundary. Explore the feeling that gave rise to the behavior, the problem, the incident. So you know, I can really hear that you are so cross and so angry that somebody's just pinched your teddy, your little sister's pinched your teddy. And then you scaffold alternative ideas and actions that could lead to more appropriate. So I'm just wondering, if that happens again, what could we do? What could we do that might help you to feel less cross and angry if your little sister pinches your teddy? You know, so come up with some ideas. Well, we could get something else for her to play with, or I could give her it for a little bit with a timer or time it. She could have it for 5 minutes, or we could put it out of reach so she can't take it. So in coming up with those solutions, you're empowering the child, aren't you, to believe that they can overcome the difficulties, manage the behaviour and manage the behaviour and the feeling. So now you're calm. Can you remember what made you so angry? Next time you're feeling like this, what we could do differently. And what was the feeling just before when you were feeling so cross? Well, where was it in your body? I wonder, where could you go, or who you could go to would help you feel safe when you feel like that. I mean, you know, there's endless examples, aren't there? But it's helping them to come up with a solution, so empowering. Again, this thing here, I'm not going to show it, but Inside Out, what a fantastic film about emotions and feelings. And there's the most beautiful scene in it when there's the little pink elephant fella is totally sad and dysregulated and can't cope, absolutely heartbroken. And you see a great example of another character, woo, trying to distract. Hey, I know, let's do this. Let's have funny. Let's completely dismiss your feelings and distract you. And then this little character with the glasses comes alongside and says, oh, I can see you're feeling really sad. That must be really awful. And she sits alongside the pink the pink person, with empathy and support quietly, and then bingo, the lid's back on and away the character goes off to play and be energetic again. Just so that's just the validating the experience. It was such a good example of emotion coaching. You'll see it loads of times in that film. So when sadness is sadness, comforts, bing bong. Okay, I'm nearly done now, and I'm really hoping you're taking away something about emotion coaching. But just to remind you, really, that the whole iceberg analogy, which we use so often, don't we? But what behaviours we see when children lose it, when their lid is flipped and all their mammalian reptilian brain are exposed, there's nothing rational there anymore. We might see things like screaming, throwing, crying, hitting, silence, or being really withdrawn. But remember, we need to attend to the bit below that. If we just tend to the top, we're tending to be disapproving. We need to attend to the feelings that lie beneath the behaviours. So the anger, the fear, frustration, tiredness, hungry, frustration, embarrassment, sadness. I think embarrassment is an interesting one, actually, because you do really see it come over with little people in quite an unexpected way. But what's needed from us as caregivers here at nursery and at home and in the people around our children as they flip their lid and become dysregulated is empathy, calm, love, kindness, listening, being emotionally present. And that's pretty hard in this busy world. You actually have to stop and join them, stop and sit down the hole with them for a bit. Non-judgmental. All emotions are normal, even if you personally don't like some of them. Be patient, be understanding, and be curious. What is it about this behavior? What's the feeling or the experience that's causing this behavior? And it's about boundaries and guidance, isn't it? So all that guidance above, but to feel safe in the world, a child must absolutely have the right balance of empathy and emotional scaffolding, but clear boundaries set by their loving adult. So that's me done in explaining emotion coaching and how we use it at St. Paul's. And yeah, I suppose it'd just be really great for you to wonder a bit, have a think, how does the emotion-based approach compare or fit into how you respond to your child at home? And just to say, we're here to talk about it to you. The nursery key people are really skilled in emotion coaching, and as are actually the Central Bristol Children's Centre family support team. If you're finding things tricky with behaviour or managing emotions at home and feel like you need some support in guidance, really helping to guide your child as well as empathise, our family support team are really able to meet you and support you on that as well. But yeah, please get in touch if you want to know more or ask some questions. And you'll see on display boards around nursery, actually, we have got a display board down the corridor about supporting children's self-regulation and emotional well-being, PSED. So thanks for listening, and I love sharing this stuff. Like I say, it's really central to what we do, and I think makes a massive difference in how we meet and approach and support children to self-regulate. So good luck with thinking about your emotion coaching responses to children. Thanks for listening. Take care.